So welcome to the Hidden Secrets of Language part 2. It's really great to have you here. I'm going to do a really quick recap of what we did last week. Of course, you know that if you want to see the first part of this, it is actually in the group. It's also on my YouTube channel, so you can jump on. So we'll have a quick review of last week. So as I said last week, communication, although 7% of only words is communication, it's the only way that you can directly talk to someone or tell someone what you want. So really important that when you use language that you know exactly what it is that you're saying and they hear you properly. So again, just a quick recap of why would you want to learn the hidden secrets behind language and what I'm going to show you this morning, so that you're heard, so that you're understood, so that you can relate to others through words, build rapport through words, understand others better, and keep people interested in what you have to say. So as a business owner, really important that you know how to listen to particular language and how to use particular language when it comes to speaking with potential clients and clients as well. And when it does come to potential clients, it's all about selling in their language. So language is made up of predicates, keywords, common experience and associations that we talk about, and content chunks, meaning the amount, how long or short your sentences is. We spoke last week about a preferred representational system. We all have preferred systems that we like to speak in, and there are the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or self-talk, or AD. We call it Auditory Digital in NLP, meaning that we speak to ourselves first before we then communicate with others. And predicates were the words we use, and we're going to work a little bit with predicates today. And visual predicates, people will talk about I see, I look. Oh, go back to this slide, sorry. Auditory predicates will be things like I hear, I listen. Kinesthetic would be I feel, and they're very much about feeling everything. They, that feeling that gives me, things like that. And auditory digital is I sense, I think. So today we're going to start here. This is the first slide for today, and it's going to be phrases for selling. So one of the most important things that you have to do when you're speaking with a potential client, and guys that are watching on Facebook, please comment. I can see this live, and would love you guys to ask me any questions. The people who are here on the actual webinar this morning, please pop your questions in the chat box and I will answer them. So it's really important that you listen very carefully to your clients when they chat with you. And when your clients chat with you, you want to be listening out, okay, to the words that they use. Because what you want to be doing is relating back to them in their language, not yours, phrases that will help them understand what you're selling. And this isn't about pushing a sale on anyone whatsoever. This is all about being able to communicate your value in your product at a better level than if you spoke to someone not using their language or their preferred representational systems. So for instance, I'm a very visual person, and you can tell I'm a very visual person. I speak very fast. I see everything around me. So in my language, you hear, if I'm just talking naturally, if I'm actually with a client, I tend to flip into their representational system. I've learned to do that over the years. But if I'm in my own, natural way of speaking, I tend to be very heavily into all the visual words. So it's really important that to be heard, that you need to be able to speak in your client's preferred language patterns. So let's have a look at some of the things that you would use for someone who's visual. Remember, you're listening, you've picked it up. And the other way, actually, now that I think of it, that you could tell whether a client, if you've picked up the correct way a client speaks to you, I guess would be to do things like, give them a few phrases back and see whether they respond. And if they don't respond, it's possible that you've picked up the wrong representational system. But let's have a look at visual. So phrases that you could use once you've spoken to your client that are visual to be able to demonstrate value in your product. And some of them are, if I could show you, what this program will do for you, are you interested in that? Would you like to look at this? Okay, you should always, when you're speaking to clients, regardless of which representational system they have, never ever force your products on anyone. Always ask for permission. It's a great way to sell. People don't like to be sold to, so always asking is a good way. So would you like to look at someone who's visual? Gives them the choice to look at something or not. Can you imagine how good? And imagine is when someone imagines, they can imagine a visual picture. So can you imagine how good this is? Okay. And you can focus on the benefits. So we're using all very, very, very visual terms and phrases to speak to the client about your product. The next one we're going to have a look at is auditory. Okay, so it's all about listening and hearing when it comes to someone who's auditory. So if you've picked up that someone's preferred system is auditory, you want to say phrases like, if I could tell you, would you like to hear about this? If this sounds good, would you be interested? I can discuss the benefits. So again, we're looking at phrases which have got all to do with listening. Now, one of the things that I want to comment here when it comes to these phrases too, which I like to teach people, if you run webinars, if you run anything, even a short webinar like this, or if you do big workshops, please be aware that when you start each segment of your workshop, that it's really important, okay, that you first speak visually, then move into auditory, then into kinesthetic, then into auditory digital or self-talk. Now, I spoke about this last week. A person who is visual and auditory tonal, auditory means auditory tonal, meaning that they actually don't hear their own voice or voices speaking to themselves. It's about voices coming from the outside or sounds coming from the outside. They tend to speak a lot faster. So you need to begin speaking a little bit faster when you start talking all about the visual and the auditory, and then move into the other two styles. So just something I wanted to throw in there. So really, really important that you pick up all four of these communication styles if you're doing a workshop. So the next one is kinesthetic phrases for selling. And it's really important that you understand that someone who is kinesthetic is all about the feeling of things. So if I could help you get a hold of, okay, people that are kinesthetic like to touch things, feel things, you know, be able to grasp things in their hands. So one way that you could use, you know, and I'm using the same phrases for these four examples just to be able to get you to see the difference between them. So if I could help you get a hold of is a great one for a kinesthetic person. Would you like to get a feel for this? Okay, again, someone who's kinesthetic, we often hear about kinesthetic learners. They are the ones that have to actually practice something and do something. Okay, if this feels good. And the last one is you can get in touch with the benefits. Okay, so again, this is all about using their way of communicating and their way of being able to touch and feel and get into their mode of communication so that they can see the value in something. And auditory digital, last week I spoke about someone who is auditory digital tends to have to think about things first, okay? So it's really important that if you have someone who is kinesthetic or someone who is auditory digital, that you have to understand that a kinesthetic person needs to feel things first, and a person who's auditory digital needs to repeat the things to themselves. Whatever you say, they need to repeat it to themselves. So if you're someone like me and you speak really, really fast, you'll actually get lost. Everything will be lost in translation. If you speak really, really fast, when it comes to speaking to someone who's kinesthetic and auditory digital, because before they even get to process what you've just said, you're moving on to the next thing. So this is another reason why it's so important that if you have a potential client who is kinesthetic or auditory digital, that you, right, make sure that you understand and know that before you start chatting with them, so that you can slow right down. And you don't slow right down because they're, they don't get it. It's not about that, is that they need to process, okay? So a kinesthetic person needs to wait to see how they feel, and someone who's auditory digital needs to repeat it first, and then they'll give you an answer. So here are some of the phrases that you can use when it comes to being auditory digital. If you could understand the process, people who are auditory digital love processes, okay? So, and they need to understand everything. Would you like to consider this? Really important. They need to consider, they need to go through their own thinking process to understand whether it's something that they would like to do or not. The experience is great. They love experiences. They love, someone who's auditory digital loves everything about an experience of something, and being able to look at that experience and the process that they've gone through and actually think about it and analyze it and things like that. And the last one is you can understand all the benefits. And it's really important because these people really, really need to understand all the benefits. So thank you very much for being here, guys. I like to keep these nice and short because I know it's really difficult. I know everyone's in lockdown at the moment, so it's not that important because we're not all rushing off to work. But I know it's really difficult to listen to really long or watch really long webinars. So I'm going to keep these as short as possible when I can. For anyone who's watching, thank you for everyone who watched on the group. And thank you so much for my participants here live in the Zoom. If you would like to chat with me, you can find me on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Please reach out if you'd like to know more about any trainings that I do. If you'd like to know more about my business mentoring, I do specialize in service-based businesses and help them to become more profitable easily and effortlessly. So again, thank you so much for watching this morning. Thank you so much for everyone who is on the webinar. I'm thinking about actually making these webinars at a later date a later time every day. In my wisdom, when I started to do these at 8 p.m., 8 a.m., it's 8 a.m. in the morning. We weren't in lockdown, but it seems that being in lockdown, I think it's easier for people to jump on Zoom a little bit later, but I will let you know. Thank you so much to everyone who's here on the recorded webinar itself. I am going to stop the recording.